Today we are making slow cooker lamb shanks, which have to be a winter favourite. So we start off with some carrots. Because it's a slow cooker recipe, you don't have to be too fussy about how finely you chop the carrots, because it is in the slow cooker for somewhere between 6 and 8 hours. So just 2 carrots and a couple of onions. Brown onions are fine. So just top and tail them. The easiest way to take off that first layer of skin is basically to cut them in half and then peel that off. For not crying? Well, I do actually. I store them in the fridge, like a couple of hours before. Some people I've heard of, I used to work in a restaurant and they used to have one of those just old-fashioned fan standing next to the poor person who was peeling a bag of onions, a 10-kilo bag of onions. That tends to work. I don't know about onion goggles. So to chop an onion, just halve it, and I tend to just run my knife about 3/4 of the way through and then just cut it crossways, and then you'll end up with a fairly fine dice. Garlic, I think you can never have too much garlic in a slow roast. Because it is cooked for so long, it ends up really beautiful and mellow tasting. It's not really punchy garlic. So about 4 cloves we've got in this recipe. So just giving this a fine chop. This recipe has got a bouquet garni as one of the ingredients, and a bouquet garni is basically a little bundle of fresh herbs. So we've got some fresh bay leaves here. If you didn't have access to fresh bay leaves, you could use dried bay leaves, that would be perfectly fine. Some parsley, just 1 or 2 sprigs. So just pick it out of the bunch, stalks and all. So just fold that in half. Bay leaves on top, maybe about 3 or 4 thyme sprigs. And then a piece of string, kitchen string. Just hold one end of it and then basically just wind the string around just till it's nice and firm, and then just tie it once or twice, and that's a bouquet garni, and that will infuse such beautiful flavour into the casserole. Our veggies are done. Now we come to the star of the show, that's lamb shanks. So you can see here the butcher has just trimmed off that little knuckle, and particularly when you're cooking in a slow cooker, it's really quite limited space, so I like to ask them just to cut that off, and then it allows me to at least cook 6 lamb shanks in the slow cooker. About a half a cup of flour or thereabouts, and season it at this stage with some salt and some fresh pepper. Give that a little mix around. So, flouring. It's basically just rolling the lamb in the flour and then just dusting off the excess. And that just helps to create a seal on the lamb, and also it will help to thicken the sauce. It's a cut that's on the bone, and any meat that's on the bone will just give you such superior flavour. Okay, over to the stove. So have your flame or your stove set at kind of medium to high, and let that pan heat up, and then add a couple of tablespoons of oil. Browning the shanks will create, probably the best way to describe it is that you're sealing in the juices. So if you were just to pop the lamb shanks in the slow cooker with all the other ingredients, it wouldn't be quite as flavourful. So by browning the shanks, you're getting beautiful caramelization on the meat, and that gives you like another level of flavour. So it's really worth that extra step. Okay, there we go. That's what we're looking for, some really nice colour. Okay, our shanks are really beautiful and brown. So straight into the slow cooker at this stage. And just one tip, when I started to prepare this dish, I turned my slow cooker on, so just on low, so at least it's getting a bit of a head start to warming it up. Okay, so now it's time to brown our vegetables. And you can see in the pan I've got just a little bit of residue oil from the lamb. And also I've got a little bit of residue flour. And I don't want that really to taint the vegetables because it can sometimes blacken. So I really want to get rid of that. Pop the pan back on the heat and just add a little bit of fresh olive oil to the pan and in with the vegetables. So we don't need to cook this down too much because it does spend so much time in the slow cooker, but you just want to start the onion to soften. Our liquid that we're going to add next, so a cup of wine, and a couple of cans of tomatoes, just the chopped ones, or if they were just the peeled ones, it doesn't really matter. Okay. Some tomato paste and some stock. So in goes the wine. I always like to put the wine in first, and the heat will drive off the alcohol, so then your casserole won't end up too winey. You'll just end up with a really rich, beautiful flavour. So just let that simmer away. And stock. So lots of different options on the market. I've got the Tetra Pak stock, which is readily available at the supermarkets. Try and buy the salt reduced because it does tend to add quite a lot of salt to the casserole. You could certainly do a beautiful lamb stock, but not the same shanks. In goes our tomato paste and canned tomatoes. So when you're using the slow cooker, this is quite an important step, is to bring this liquid up to the simmer. It just makes it an easier job for the slow cooker to reach the correct temperature. And we've got our signature bubbles, so being really careful, just pour all of that into the cooker. With your bouquet garni, just pop it on the top. So my tip for the slow cooker is to wrap the lid in a tea towel and then pop it on nice and firmly, and that will help to absorb the condensation, and your sauce will be a lot thicker and more delicious. So the lamb's done.
What would you serve with the lamb shanks?
Oh, the obvious choice is mashed potato, and that has to be my favourite. My test kitchen tip from mashed potato is to use a ricer instead of the traditional potato masher, because you can see those really fine holes in there, and you put the steamed or boiled potatoes inside and then basically force it through, so you're getting these lovely fine shreds of potato. Then I love to add either warm milk or cream, depending on how rich you would like to make it, and some butter, of course. So to about 1 kilo of potatoes, it's about, gosh, 3/4 cup of cream or milk and about 50 grams of butter, and that will be a potato mash to die for. The most important thing to remember for potato is to season. So a little bit of flake salt and some freshly ground pepper. And I could happily sit down to just a bowl of mashed potato. But we're in luck today, we've got our lamb shanks. So let's put a nice big generous splodge just on the base of there. And we'll have a look at our beautifully tender lamb shanks. Wow, look at that. That meat is falling off the bone. I'm pretty excited. So, just one. You can see how meltingly tender that is. That bone is just coming apart so beautifully. Add some sauce. Finish this with a little bit of chopped parsley or just pulled parsley. Don't need to get your chopping board out again. That's just going to give it just a little bit of freshness. I like to serve it with broccolini, but you could do snow peas, fresh or frozen peas. Pan-fried zucchinis would be absolutely beautiful.